Good afternoon from yammybtv. Wishing you all well, sending loads of love to you as usual. Now, I've got a bit of nostalgia here, and I'd like to pick some of your brains as well, especially some of you that watch me, that went to school with me, because I know there's quite a few of you that are up there. Now, I haven't seen a lot of these faces ever again, right? So it's 1975, just before I went into care. Now, I'm going through the children in the photograph, and I'm going to see what memories springs to mind when I remember their names, or if I remember their names, because there's some that I just can't at the moment, but with a little jolt, I probably could. So I'm freelancing this as usual, right? So there it is. There's the picture. There's the picture from Gateway School in 1975. Now, right, can you see it there? Right, so we see quite clearly that the idiot there, there's a little small boy there in a jeans jacket, and he's pulling a face, and that little boy would be me. So quite clearly we see from the very start in life, a bit of a comedian is the least to say, because I can remember that I used to pull many faces. I was the classroom clown, if you like. And that there is our class teacher, which was Mr. Mann. What do I remember about Mr. Mann? I remember that he was a very strict, but I think, unless some of you doubt me or remember more, I think he was a decent man. He looks pretty serious to me. He looks more like a science teacher. If I remember rightly. What else do I do? He's a bit, not a bit aloof, maybe. Had a dry sense of humour, I would say now, if I look back. And of course, as well as me being the school clown, I also remember down there's a little, I think, a little Chinese orientation young girl, and her name was Lai. And I think she lived in the same estate as me, which was Lisson Green Estate. And my memory of her was that on her birthday, right? On her birthday, my older sister, had one of those blue children's makeup bags, like a plasticky kind of things, I think is the best way to describe it. So I didn't have a present to give her, but I quite liked her. But I knocked on her front door, but I didn't face her. But I left the gift outside the door and legged it, right? So that's the memory I've got of young Lai. Never ever saw her again. Never heard nothing from her again either. Be nice to know how she's doing, how since time's gone by. My bet would be that she did quite well with her life, not like me. We go across here and we talk about the two that I used to go to school with every single day of the week, brothers Gary and Gregory. So my first memories was they had an older brother called Paul, and that old record came out by Junior Mervyn called Police and Thieves, and I used to go around their house, and we used to go to school every morning together. I remember they used to be into motorbikes. I remember Barry Sheen, and they always used to come with these magazines and say, Sam, look at these. I can remember also going to school. Sad memories as well for me during this time as well, because I used to wake up, I used to go to school crying sometimes, and they used to say to me, look, Sam, go back home. Don't go into school like that, because then we knew that mum and dad was going through such problems during this spell here. So there, at the top there, I think he's in blue, and he's got his head down a little bit. His name was Terry O'Brien. He lived at the bottom of Church Street, and he was really tall for his age. And he wasn't so much into football or sports, if I remember rightly, but he was good at a range of other subjects. But I always remember him asking me what I wanted to be. And I said I wanted to be a footballer. And he said he wanted to be a policeman. And I'm hearing in later life that he actually was, right? So we move over and we get to right at the top there. Say at the top, that side there, there's a light coloured skin guy. who lived in the same estate as me. His name was Matthew Lewis, right? And I'll never forget it. We was in the classroom. He was a bit bigger than me. And me being the cheeky little blighter that I was during those days, I picked a fight with him. And he threw the first punch. He threw the first punch, and my eye ended up bleeding. And I tried to fight back, and I can remember him holding me saying, Sam, look, you're too small. I don't want to fight you. So it all got splitted up, right? So that's the earliest memories of Matthew as well. I remember seeing him in later life as well. I think he had a brother called Raphael, if I remember, some of you remember rightly. Also, along there is down at the bottom in between Gary and Gregory, the brothers, was Mark Rickard. I think his dad was a policeman, but me and this guy, little kid, used to go football, and we used to play for the school team together, and we used to play for the same Sunday league as well at some stage, I think. But what memory that stands out for me from him was we used to have a five-a-side tournament, right? So during this time, I've gone into care, and I used to live in Westbourne Park, which is Brunel Estate, where all the bad stuff happened, right? Where the stabbing happened. And I'll never forget it. We used to win all our games, right, in the sports complex over Westbourne Park, over the flyover. They used to have this little sports place. And we had all these football matches, and we won every single game, right to the end. And there was a team, the best team in the London, West London, Paddington area, where John Barnes played for, funny enough. And all we had to do was draw with Stowe Club, right? Stowe Club, right? Youth club as well, off the Harrow Road. And we lost. And I'll never forget it. All the rest of the team, all the rest of the 4, 5, 6 aside, I think it was, walked off, like we shook hands or whatever. But me and him were inconsolable, sitting on the floor, crying our eyes out. I know. It's very, very hard to take when you're little, when you want to go into school the next day, to say the least we needed a point to win. And not only that, up to today, I can remember how we lost as well, because it was a geezer called Dave Adams or something like that. And I'll never forget, there was only about 2 minutes left. It was 0-0, and the geezer scored, and it went in the pot. And you remember the whole complex was ran with all the other teams that were taking part and watching as well. So at the end of the game, they were saying, they were taking a mick out of me and him crying. But that's how much football meant to us during those days as well. So on top of that, I have there, near Terry O'Brien, Patricia LeBrun. She used to wear glasses, and she was very, very intelligent. And I remember I used to ask her questions during the class when the exams, you used to have all them little exam things. And she always used to help me with my schoolwork. And she says, always say, Sam. Years later, I think she used to pass me by, smile at me and say, hello, Sammy. I don't know whether she was aware of the journey that I went on. But yeah, that's what stands out for me. But a lovely girl, I think I remember her being as well. Looking back here, hold on one second. I remember I've got problems with my fingers. I hate when this happens. Who's the top person there? So listen to this one now. There is Debbie Norton, right? Very big girl for her age, right? That's her there. And next to her was the biggest guy in the classroom as well. And I think his name was Kevin White, right? So if I can remember quite quickly, it's really weird how you remember little things, I always had little angels around me, even from the crack of dawn. I can remember me and him having an argument in the classroom, or I was being cheeky. But she came out during the dinner break and offered him outside in the school playground or down by the stairs, and had a proper punch up with a boy who was quite big like her and held her own. So, she was a bit of a handful in that way, but I'd like to thank her now for protecting me, kind of thing. But Kevin, he was all right as well, if you get what I mean. Who else do I remember there? Who's that with the Arsenal shirt? Trying to remember his name, and I can't for the life of me. I think that's Carol Alger. I think some of you are going to say, no, it isn't Yammy, because I can't remember. I do know she was my age, but I think she's still around today and she's still on Facebook and I still say hello. And I can remember going to one of her parties. No, mum and dad had gone away and I'd stayed out. We managed to stay out, and it was the times of Casey and the Sunshine Band and Hot Chocolate and, you know, So You Win Again. I knew his son, actually. He's got a son called Errol. Errol Brown was his name, but he's also got a son because he had many sons, Errol Brown, and one of them was from Labatt Grove, Obi, I think his nickname was as well. So I remembered that. And I remember, sorry, they got me on the seat dancing at night with the music playing, with the light going on and off. So again, a bit of the classroom clown. I can remember little bits and bobs. But I'd just like to say hello to Carol, who's been supporting me on my journey for the last few months, always wishing me well. 1 second. Let me just drink this. But over here, now, again, it always seems to be, I think a lot of kids, we always seem to have a lot of fights. Now, when we look at these pictures here, that geezer's name is Mustafa, and that geezer's name is Solomon. He was Egyptian. His dad used to own a shop at the top of Church Street, and it was like a kind of Egyptian food shop restaurant, but the house was upstairs, right? And him, Mustafa, I can always remember he used to laugh at everything. I know, that's the first thought that comes into my mind. I don't think I ever saw him again, but I can remember having a fight with Solomon as well. Everyone was bigger than me at that time as well, and I can remember us having a swinging match outside, and I was trying to say that I won, but really I think I lost. But a decent boy as well. I wish I would have seen him again as well, but I never got to see these again. That's what happens when you spend so much time in institutions. You haven't got a clue what happened, you know, how their lives went. Did they end up in prison? Did they end up with good careers? Are they even alive today? Also, as well, there, you see that picture quite clearly of me as well. You can quite see what comedian I was even then. I think I always used to mimic cowboy films and things like that, if I'm perfectly honest. So in the middle there, what other names do I remember there out of them lot there? At the top there, he's on Facebook now, Gary Greenwood. So, you know, every Wednesday from Gateway, we used to always have a school trip to, what was it? The swimming baths, Seymour Place, right? That's Gary Greenwood there. And we used to end up in the swimming baths together. And I can always remember us coming back from swimming, and we would sharing a chair opposite each other. And there was a song called January. January, sick and tired, don't you worry me. But I think you make me sad in your eyes. So I think we was both, the memory I have of him was both of us singing that. I wonder if you remember that, Gary, if you're watching this, right, on Facebook. Also here, so we got Matthew there, hold on. We got that there, so who else did I, hold on 1 second, sorry, bear with me. This is really nostalgic for me. I wanted to see how good my memory was. Who else is? Yeah, this one's a real sad one. Her name was Vicky Hart, or Vicky Lang. She had a sister called Tanya Lang, and she lived in Lisson Green Estate, and rest in peace. She's no longer with us. I never ever got to see her again. I think I saw her once when I had a girlfriend. Not many in my life, but it was about the 80s, and she lived in a block with one of my besties at that time, Marco Mendonca, Portuguese, and Roy Mendonca. And sadly, Roy, I think they had kids together and had to bring up, she died very, very young, and rest in peace to her as well. So Vicky Lang, paying my respects there to you as well. And right there, in the corner, I think her name is Annette Grange. I can't remember, I swear to God, but she would have been the only one with blonde hair in. Annette something anyway. But I remember I was very good at chemistry in the classroom there. I think that's her name. And the other one was Charmaine Robinson. I saw her on and off for years in the 18s, never ever saw her again, sadly. Went up with one of my best mates, Michael Bishop. Hope he's still around, Michael, because I hadn't seen him for a little while. I saw him on and off during the 80s and 90s when I was coming out a little bit. But how many of us have memories? Oh, here he is. The Chinese fellow at the top there, his name was Tat Wan. So on the way to school, you know, there used to be many of us that used to just meet up to go together, which would have been about 4 or 5 of us. I think Mark Rickard, we used to wait because he used to live at the bottom of the school, but Tat Wan lived on Cottage Low House and he was a brain box. The maths classes, which was my favourite subject, funny enough. But when it came to certain, like, you know, exams, let's say, that I always used to make sure that I sat, like, over him or near him so that I could look at his papers, and he used to let me have a sly little look. So I was a bit of a cheater way back then as well. But Tat, I don't know what happened to you, my boy, but lovely Chinese family. And I remember we weren't, I don't know what it was, but we was only allowed in the passageway in the mornings. Very, very strict families. Very different upbringings to cultures now. Or very much, no, not different cultures. But, and again, very, very interesting as well. Asians back then, you know, me being partly Asian myself, used to get a real rough time because of the smell of the food. And, you know, on the balcony, they always seem to get picked on the most. Broken windows, get called names, things thrown at them. They very used to be isolated and things like that. You was either white or black, and that was it back then. Other cultures used to really struggle in the old days in England, I'll tell you that much. Depending on where you're from, of course. If you were somewhere where it was predominantly Asian, but I can't really remember because I didn't really visit anywhere else. But I know where I lived, Asians got a real tough time back then that could never happen today. Who else? Who do I look at here and see? So that was Charmaine Robinson. Football. Matthew Lewis, Terry O'Brien, Mr. Man. All right, so I can't remember, but I think that she is Catherine. I think she's Catherine Jones, which would have been the most brainiest person in the class. You know, when the questions get asked, and there's always one whose hand goes up straight away, and she always gets the questions right. So I think that might be, I might have that confused with another school or another class, but I think that is her. But probably the reason for this video today is because, sadly, and lovely as well, this was the year below me, right? So this was the year underneath me, and that one there in the middle there with, she looks a bit darker than me, that would have been my younger sister Jane, who sadly I don't, you know, we don't talk no more. But there, my first ever love, the first time I ever felt love in my life, where we used to play kiss chase in the playground, and she always used to run away from me. I couldn't get a kiss off her. And that's her with the blonde hair, with the brown, with the grey shirt on. And the reason why I point to her today, because it was her that sent me, because I never heard from her for 50 years or 45 years. I always used to ask questions, and finding out now that I got all the wrong information about her, because, you know, certain things stick out in your mind, and one of those was her father, bless him, owned or managed the Cockpit Theatre, which is opposite Quinton, not opposite Gateway School, on that road. And she used to live, because her dad was the caretaker, she used to live on the premises, so the windows were up there. So after school, I always used to throw stones at the window to see if I could attract her attention. And she used to come to the window, but I think she fancied someone else back then, one of her childhood sweethearts. I won't mention him today. Uh, but I felt so delighted to hear from her. But sadly, she's had to suffer so much over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years and work for the NHS as well. A lovely proper nurse, one of the proper nurses, old school nurses, but has suffered so many traumas in recent times, like with cancer and other things that, you know, being a non-smoker, drinker. Well, I think she had a drink, not too much, but not suffered with addictions. Was involved in relationships. Only one, I think. One relationship. I don't think that worked out too hard. Not too pleased what I'm hearing from there, actually, to be honest. If you get what I mean. But she's gone through all these, been in chemo right now. And even whilst being in chemo, still laughing, still a bubbly self. I used to follow her when I was a bit of a weirdo, even back then. I used to follow her everywhere. You know, when you're just in love with someone when you're really, really young and used to wait outside school and wait for her to walk past. I knew her sister Tracy as well. Big up Tracy Corquin as well. So Linda Corquin, special love going out to you today, and nice to really be back in contact with you. And just on top of that, going through all her chemo, it looks like she's winning. Great fighter, very bubbly, like I said. And she was just involved in a crash the other day as well with one of her youngsters in the car, and suffered injuries, and the rest walked away unscathed, I think. I'm not too sure. But very, very soon, you're going to see that interview as well, hopefully all going well. And she will be able to describe, you know, what school days were like. And there she is, Linda Corquin, the first ever little girl that I fancied with all my heart. Even when I used to be in prison for the early days, I always lie there thinking about how she's doing and who she's with, and I wonder if I'll ever get to see her again. I'm not trying to come onto her or anything like that now, because we do have heart to heart. We've had a couple of conversations. But yeah, lovely, lovely girl, and one of the bravest ladies I've come across since I've been out, because I'm not talking about just one scare with cancer and things like that. She doesn't mind me saying, because quite a few people know her and are on Facebook with her. I don't remember this teacher here. Do I remember anybody else from the year below? No, but Linda Corquin, special mention to you, and hope to see you very soon for a cup of coffee. Sending loads of love.